I've used long and short stitch extensively on my crewel work chrysanthemums, and I've called this thread painting because I've used long and short stitch in a shaded way. So I've started with a paler colour and then worked gradually darker shades on top, and the leaves are done in a similar way. In my peacock here, I've used long and short stitch on the body in just two colours. And we're going to do long and short stitch on the wheel in just two colours. If you happen to have two threads that are very close together in shade, then use those. Otherwise, don't worry too much. It's really just to practice the technique. For this little bit of long and short stitch, I've drawn a sort of tulip shape, or if you turn it upside down it looks like a snowdrop. So two little petals here and one in the middle, and I've outlined it in split back stitch. So what I did was I started here at the base and went round each petal and then just put a little circle in to finish. I've done mine in yellow because I've found a contrasting colour with yellow, green and a bit of orange in it. So it's quite similar, but I'm hoping that it will show long and short stitch with a little bit of shading. Let's see how it turns out anyway. So I've threaded my crewel needle and I'm going to come up in one of the petals right in the centre. So halfway down, halfway across, right in the centre. And I'm going to take my needle to the outside of that split back stitch. So that's my long stitch. And then for my shorter stitch, I'm going to come up about 3/4 of the way up that stitch and then take my needle again to the outside. The split back stitch means that you get a neater edge. And then we'll do a long one. Now these stitches don't have to be all of the same length. They can be different lengths. In fact, it's better if they are. So this next short one I'll make slightly shorter. Don't make it less than halfway. Less than half of the original stitch. And you can see that I'm gradually getting it over to this one side. You need to angle your stitches a little bit so that they are going to go into the centre, because the petal shape gets thinner as you go down. And then you can go over to the other side and do a short one. So this is why it's called long and short stitch, because for the first row only you're doing long and short stitches. So I'm trying to angle it a little bit now so that my stitches go more into the centre. I'm only going to use two colours because it's a very small shape. If you've got a larger shape, you can do often 4 different shades of the same colour, and that looks quite good. And you can see that I'm coming now towards the edge and I'm angling my stitches a little bit. I'm going to do one more. And that's the first row done. Now you can, if you prefer, draw lines on the shape to help you to get the angles correctly. I'll just show you. So you can sort of look at the shape of a petal and draw some lines to guide you. But it's such a small shape, I haven't bothered with this one here. So let me show you the second row now. Now I'm going to do this one in the same colour, and I'm going to come up this time quite a long way towards the top, not at the top, but much further towards the top than you would think you would need to come. And I'm going to take a stitch further down the shape, so maybe about 3/4. Again, I'm starting in the middle, and then my next stitch is going to come a little way down and go further down the shape. So all the stitches now are of they're all, if you like, long stitches. They're put in different places, but they're all more or less equal length. So what you don't want is a ridge, so you don't want to start them all in the same place. And you start further up the shape than you think you need to, because once you've done the stitch, it sort of lies, it sort of hides itself a bit in the original row. Just going to do one more. To fit it in there. And then when you've done that one side, go over to the other side and come up here. So with the first row of stitching, I started in the middle of the shape. With the second row, I'm starting at the other end. I've lost my track now, I think. It's very forgiving, and you can put a stitch wherever you think it needs to go, and you can also put some in afterwards. So I'm now going to just make sure I've covered that split back stitch outline and put another one in there like that. Okay, so I'm going to show you the third row, and I'm going to use the slightly different shade. For the third row, I'm going to start about there. So, you know, quite a long way up the shape. And then I'm going to take it down to about here. And then I'm going to come further down and go almost down to the bottom, but not quite. We're going to get another row in after this. So again, I'm going to one side and then the other. Always start in the middle of the shape. You want to make sure that you've covered your split back stitch outline. Just I think if it looks right, leave it, but you know, cover those stitches that need covering. Right, let's go over to the other side. So I started with one quite high up, so I'll go a bit lower down. You want to achieve a jagged edge. You don't want straight lines. So I'm going to go quite a long way up with that one. Let's go down there. Let's go right up here. This is why this sort of work is called thread painting. You're just painting with your brush, really. Instead of painting with the brush, you're painting with the needle. So I very nearly got to the end. Now I'm just going to put one final row in, starting about here, and this is going to take me all the way down to the bottom. So all your stitches now go to the bottom or near the bottom, and you won't need many to finish it off. You could, if you've got a darker shade, you could put a little darker shade in the final row, and that sort of sets it off quite nicely. And that'll do. So I've got a little bit of green you can see coming through, which is quite nice. Now I'm going to do the same on this side. I'll just show you how to start again. So come up in the middle and go right to the outside of the shape for your long stitch, and then come up next to it between 1/2 and 3/4 of the way down and go to the outside. So your next one can be of a different length, and go to the outside. That one's 3/4 long, and go to the outside. Obviously we're covering this split back stitch, and we're going to cover it on this side as well. So when I've completed this petal, I'm going to fill this one in. I'm probably going to use a different colour because I think that would just look nice, and I'll come back and show you that. For the centre here, I found a little bit of amber, and I'm just going to fill in the shape in exactly the same way. So starting in the middle and doing a long stitch first, and then a short one, and I may only need to do 3 rows, but I'm going to do them in the same colour. So you just have to be careful not to pierce the petals on the outside that you've already done. So it's just it's a good filling in stitch. So you're going to the outside of your original split back stitch. Now onto the other side. And then your second row, just come up quite near the top and take it down a bit further. You'll definitely only need 3 rows for this bit. Then I'm on my final row, taking it right down. And you can put some tiny stitches in if you need to anywhere, just to fill the gaps. It's quite forgiving once you get started. That'll do. So that's, I don't know what it is really. I'm just going to turn it round because it looks different if you turn it round. So you could regard it as a snowdrop from one side and maybe a tulip or a different flower from the other side. So let's move on to the next stitch.